Hello and welcome to Letters Home, a story of a World War II B-17 pilot from Lowell, Michigan in his own words. And he just so happens to be my grandpa. I'm your host, Annie Whitlock, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, my dad, Mitch McMahon, my aunt, Lori Summerfield, and Dale Croft from the Lowell Historical Museum.
In each episode of Letters Home, we're going to dive into letters written by my dad during his time in World War II that he sent to his parents, siblings, and friends back home in Lowell, Michigan. We'll be reading his own words and giving some context as to what was happening in the world and in Lowell at the time he wrote these.
In this episode, Dad thinks he knows his plans for the future in the service and reflects on how the Army has changed him after hearing of a friend's death. And we learn a little bit more about Bruce's Uncle Jim.
Yes, a very reflective episode this time around. So we're going to start in April 1943, and Bruce is still in Blythe, California, awaiting a new crew for him to train, and he is a little unsure of his next assignment and where he's going next. So on April 3rd, 1943, he wrote to his parents about his plans in his own words.
They called me into the major's office yesterday, and they wanted me to stay around here and instruct. I know your feeling on this, but I'm going to be truthful with you. I asked that he consider someone else first, and if they couldn't get another fellow who qualified, I'd do my best. I do prefer combat, and told them so. Really, it isn't any more dangerous. However, whatever they say goes, so I'll know in a week or so, and then I'll let you know.
I do not believe that at all. It's not any more dangerous.
Yeah, he's
right.
That is absolutely not. That cannot possibly be true.
Mm-hmm.
So it's revealed here.
That was for Grandma's sake, I think.
Yes, absolutely. He specifically asked to go across or to go to combat. And yeah, I'm sure Frank and Lotta were not very happy with that. So yeah, you said that surprised you.
Well, I just didn't know.
Yeah.
I guess I was just going by myself. I'd have been rooting for instructor.
Yeah, probably. So he's saying that he asked to go across, but in a letter that he writes to his parents 2 days later, he all of a sudden has new plans. So in his own words.
Monday. Dear Mother and Dad, I've got good news for you. Yesterday, our CO took me up on a check ride. I didn't know it was this sort of a ride until afterwards. Well, when we came down, he said, "McMahon, you're an instructor on a B-17F. Just like that. He knows how I feel about instructing, but he told me a B-17 instructor doesn't do anything but check ride officers from four-engine school. And to think, I've never been in four-engine school. Well, it was a nice compliment, and he told me I'd get my promotions faster than if I went across. So I guess I'm satisfied, at least for the time being. Usually when they make you an instructor, you have to go to instructor's school, and it also means you have been training previously in the ship you're instructing on. I've done neither of those, so my chest's out a little further and maybe my hat doesn't fit quite the same. Incidentally, he knew nothing of my previous time, so he says, but he said he'd heard I could handle a ship. Occasionally in the last few weeks I've had officers ride with me. Usually on these last missions, a flight surgeon, captains or majors have ridden with me to get their 50 hours a year. I'm sure some of them handed me out a couple of boosts when I didn't know it. At least someone's been talking. I'm sure I haven't. Ever since I was put on this special mission work, I've wondered, how come? Don't worry about me instructing now. One of the musts for an instructor is a man who knows when and when not to take chances. The reason I fought instructing all the way through is because I wanted to fly these forts. Well, I'll be doing both now, so I'll have to be satisfied.
Yeah, so he wanted combat so that he could fly the B-17s, but now he gets to do that when he's instructing, so he's happy.
Yeah.
So he says, maybe, for the time being. He says for the time being, he's happy. So I guess, yeah, when he would go across, like the original plan would be that it was not going to be instructing on B-17s because he didn't go to flight school. He didn't do any of that. So they're making him the teacher, and he didn't go to any of these things.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. But we all know how it ends because he does go across. So this will
That's
be
what he wanted, I think.
interesting to see how this unravels itself as we get closer. So we're going to skip right ahead now to our segment where we talk about what was going on in the world and in Lowell when Bruce wrote these letters. And there's a lot going on at this time in April. So we're going to read some lengthy letters from Bruce, and we'll kind of stop every so often and talk about what he's talking about as well. So we're going to start with a letter from April 1st in his own words.
Thursday. Dear Mother and Dad, Everything goes along about the same as usual. I returned last night from flying 13 enlisted men east. I was taking them to their deportation point, so I'm not allowed to tell you where it was. I did stop at El Paso, Texas on the way back and mailed a letter to Sis from there. I realize it's tough for you to not know where I am all the time, but you can always figure I'll be back here in Blythe before going across country again. Yesterday I logged 7.5 hours, so you can see I was mighty close to home, although I didn't get over Michigan. On the way from El Paso back here, I flew over Deming, and if I hadn't been under orders to return last night, I would have tried to see Jack Lally. As it was, I just had to take a look down at the camp and keep the compass on 277 degrees mag. To give you an idea of how difficult it is to fly these B-17s after getting out of traffic at El Paso, I turned on the gyro pilot and proceeded to read the latest Life all the way back. Except for an occasional glance to check engine instruments, other aircraft, it's just a matter of sitting and more sitting. I saw a bunch of B-24s yesterday at the airbase. One was painted Ford's Folly. No accounting for the names on these battle wagons. Usually they're named after women like Bouncing Betty or Jivin' Josephine. However, the one I flew on Mission East was named Wabbit Twax. There's no accounting for the names given to them. Say, Mom, could you get another picture of me from Chris Leonard? The ones we'd taken before I left? I promised Marg Allen one, but I don't get any chance to have one taken out here. Don't get worried about my love life. Nothing can or will develop until this war is over. And anyway, you and Dad are my first and only loves now and forever. If you could get a picture, have Byrne send it to her address, 1207 South State Street, Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'll write again tomorrow or the next day. All my love and prayers, your loving son, Jay Bruce.
Some fun things in this letter. Don't worry about my love life. But we'll start with the plane. So like Dale taught us last week, Bruce has now mastered the autopilot where you can just kick back and read a Life magazine, apparently, in the plane. But he also mentions these very specific airplanes and their names. And I noticed that, Dale, you managed to actually find pictures of these planes. So because I saw them in our primary sources that are on the Lowell Historical Museum website. So were these famous? Like, how are you able to find pictures of these? Ford's Folly and Wabbit Twax.
I searched for, I think, over 100 hours to find this information today. No. No.
Like, really?
I just did a search with, it works magic. You had to type in Ford's Follies and all kinds of stuff comes up. For example, Ford's Folly was the nickname of a B-24 heavy bomber that was manufactured by Ford and rolled off the assembly line at Willow Run plant in August 1944. The B-24 was designed to be faster, higher, and farther flying than the B-17 Flying Fortress. It featured a Davis wing, which was long and narrow with a thick leading edge to support the plane's 4 engines and fuel. They were used by the United States and other Allied forces during World War II. And I will have a picture of the B-24 with a Davis wing, and it's pretty cool. Ford's Folly refers to a certain B-24 Liberator bomber produced at Ford Willow Run plant, which gained notoriety due to a combination of its initial production series and the fact that it was one of the first planes to fly combat missions on D-Day. The name Folly likely came for the skepticism surrounding Ford's ability to quickly manufacture a complex aircraft like the B-24 at such a large scale, which he handled very well. You'll find out here in a minute. Willow Run was the largest war factory in the world at the time. The plant was built on 975 acres of farmland owned by Henry Ford and designed by Albert Kahn. The U.S. government contributed $200 million to the project. The Ford Company Willow Run bomber plant in Michigan completed a B-24 every 63 minutes. One came out of the plant and produced 8,685 B-24 Liberator bombers during World War II.
Wow.
Every 63 minutes.
Wow.
One of them come out the board.
So there might have been several Ford Follies, is what you're saying. Like they all kind of named that. All right.
So the B-24 Liberator was a powerful symbol of American industrial strength during World War II, with over 18,000 produced by the end of the war, of which Willow Run produced 8,600. They also had nicknames like Lib, Ford's Folly, of course, the Flying Boxcar, and Liberator Express. Now, the Flying Boxcar, when you see a picture of a B-24, kind of that kind of made me go, yeah, that's what it should be called. It's kind of an ugly plane. It had on the back tail pieces were great big round. It's an ugly plane. You'll see it in our YouTube file. Now the Wabbit-Twax.
Yeah.
Wabbit-Twax was the nickname of multiple B-17 flying Fortress aircraft with painted art based on the Bugs Bunny character.
Oh,
So
there we
it was
go.
on many planes, along with a lot of other paintings were done with the same, depending on, The Wabbit-Twax crew were some of the most decorated crews in the 8th Army Force. So they had, if you had a Wabbit-Twax painted on the side, you were going out for business.
Wow.
Well, he said he
sounds like-
flew one east when he was dropping off those the men for their overseas.
So he got to fly a Wabbit-Twax. And of course, he
saying that's cracking
he had 4 planes that he named. I can't remember. All I can remember right now, and it makes me mad, is a Michigan Morn. But he had one. Michigan Morn was one of his planes. I think it was the last one.
Captain and the Kids or whatever.
That's what it was. Captain, and which was from a cartoon series from the, and then there was another one named
That was
after
like Michigan Miss or
somebody's
something,
child or something. Yeah. Anyway, I should have had those down, but I didn't.
Well,
get
it's
them.
a bit of a mystery. I mean, we can figure out Captain and its Kids, I think, but he did have 4, right? And we mentioned that in I think one of our very first episodes about him, but we don't really know why those other names were chosen. So it's still kind of an ongoing mystery.
I think the first one had a meaning, but I can't remember the first one. Michigan Morn was like I said, I think he's the last plane that he had.
Okay, so these were. I was thinking you were finding pictures of the specific one that Bruce flew, and I was like, "Wow, how did Dale find this?" But you're saying there were many planes.
Yeah,
named
it says
Fords
multiple
Folly and
B-17
Wabbit-Twax.
flying.
Okay.
Those are
Cool.
B-17s, though, not B-24s.
All
So
right.
those didn't get individually named by their crew, or they did. You don't really know.
I don't know.
I think the crews came up with it. I'm pretty sure Bruce's crews, because he probably had, for all 4 of those planes, he probably had different crews. Because he lost 2 or 3
But
or 4.
yeah, what Dad's saying, like if many planes were called Wabbit-Twax, then clearly those are named by other people, right? Or I don't know, the manufacturer.
Yeah, there's a lot of
knows?
them named after cartoon characters of that time period.
Yeah,
Because they just fit perfectly,
that's funny.
So there we are, Fords Follies, Wabbit-Twax.
Absolutely. And of course, this letter, it mentions Marg Allen. We have to second mention of her now. So, I don't know. Things are getting serious, but he wants us to say they're not, because nothing's going to develop till after the war is over.
I think in the future we're going to have a relative. We might not say who, but there's going to be a relative standing outside that 1207 South State Street in Ann Arbor.
Because this is why
People are familiar with that.
So he writes her address here. And as I was typing this in, I was like, what does this address look like now? I think it might be, and honestly, I don't know for sure, but it might be one of the first addresses that I've seen in this podcast so far, because as if you remember, all these letters are to Lowell, right? Back and forth to Lowell, or in his base, right? Which we all know what those are. And so the Lowell addresses never had a street and a house number, because they would just write to Frank Lowell, right? But this is the first specific address I remember seeing in one of these letters. So I Googled it. I wanted to see what does this look like? Where did she live? And 1207 South State Street is still standing. It's, I'm sure now
It's in
college housing, because
it's
it says
in the
it's
heart
an
of U of
8-bedroom
M.
house.
Yeah, it's in the heart of U of M. Yeah, for sure.
So I texted it to family members that live in the area. I was like, hey, if you need a little pick-me-up this week, this is where Grandma Maggie lived. So, yeah, so that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good time. So he's sending a picture of himself to her, which I love. This is great. And,
awesome.
having Byrne do it. You send a picture directly to her. So, that's how it goes. All right. So Bruce wrote that last letter on April 1st in the morning. So it's a little bit lighter, right? He's talking about, kind of some fun things. But then he receives a letter in between with some sad news. So he actually writes another one to his parents that night. And the sad news is that his friend, Hoyt Phelps, who we've mentioned on this podcast before, when he first went to Santa Ana with 2 other men from Lowell, Hoyt was one of them, he has passed away on April 1st. It was revealed to Bruce on April 1st. So we're going to read Bruce's reflection on his friend who he went to Santa Ana with. But first, let's learn more about who Hoyt Phelps is. There were only a small group of war casualties from Lowell. So no doubt you were able to find some things about Hoyt. What did you learn about Hoyt's
Well,
death?
in the Ledger, it posted, of course, about Lieutenant Hoyt Phillips, son of Elizabeth Phillips, and the late Harry Phillips, was one of the 8 crewmen who were perished when an Army bomber crashed last Friday at Sangre de Cristo Mountains near Trinidad, Colorado. Phillips' wife, the former Mildred Kaiser of South Boston, whom he married last November, had been with him in New Mexico and had seen him off on the routine flight, which proved to be his last.
Oh, wow.
I know. It gets worse. He expected to come home April 1st on leave of absence, which would have been his first since receiving his wings and commission.
Ugh.
Lieutenant Phillips was born at Sand Lake, Michigan, May 1st, 1921, and came to Lowell with his parents in 1926. He entered Lowell School, says, where he was a bright and popular student. In high school, he was a letter winner, 3 years in football, 2 years in basketball, and 4 years in baseball. He was president of his class, both junior and senior years, president of the Athletic Association, and winner of the American Legion Honor Cup in his senior year. The senior class also voted Hoyt the best leader and most popular and all-around student of the year.
Wow.
Hoyt graduated from high school June 1939 and enlisted in January 1942.
So he's younger than Bruce.
Yeah, being inducted into the service March 28th. And he, like you said, he was immediately sent to Santa Ana, California, where he was an aviation cadet like Bruce until September 1st, when he became an advanced cadet and was sent to Williams Field in Chandler, Arizona. Here he successfully completed his bombardier training in the Air Force Advanced Flying School, all the places that Bruce went through, and on November 21st received his silver wings and a commission as second lieutenant. Now, unfortunately, he did not get to see his son born.
Oh,
Oh,
jeez.
goodness.
His
That's
son
tough.
was born July 19th. He weighed 6 pounds, 7 ounces, and his name was Hoyt Anderson.
Wow. Wow.
So he was one of that group, Ellis, Phineas. We had Hoyt, and I can't remember the other one. But he was one of the 4 or 5 that didn't come back
Yeah. Ugh.
and didn't get
I
to
didn't
see
know
his
that
son.
part.
And didn't get
Yeah.
to see his son.
Yeah.
So
So let's hear what Bruce has to say about hearing of his friend's death in his own words.
Thursday night, dear mother and dad, just received letters from both of you, and though I wrote this morning, I'm going to send another now. It was a shock to hear about Hoyt. In here, you get pretty tough into this sort of thing, but I know what news like this does to you. There's nothing I can say that will relieve your anxiety for me, I know, except there's the same God watching over all of us, and His wishes are our wishes. I've long ago resigned myself to Him and His will. It makes it so much easier to endure any hardships that come your way. When I realize how much tougher this war is on you than it is on me, I get really burning mad. Why is it that your mother and father always get the worry, anxiety, and nothing in return for it? I live well, and aside from wanting to see you, have no worries or cares, while at home there's always a cloud shadowing your every waking hour because of me. I know it's this way, and I love you both so much. I almost wish you didn't care about me as you do. Anything that would make it easier for you. I can remember my feelings when I entered Santa Ana and they told me I wouldn't see the outside for a whole month. I thought then, this is really going to be tough on me, who was used to chasing around every night. Well, after a month, I'd accustomed myself to this new life and missed very little of the old one. At times during my training, I've had those days when I figured 9 long months of this continued work and confinement would lick me. I can laugh at them now. In fact, I feel proud that they didn't lick me, but rather it served to prove to myself what sort of person I really was. It's looking back on those times when I can see so very clearly parts of you both in my character. When I stuck my chin out and said, "I'll take the worst you can give me," with a grin. Why, that was you, Dad. It was your nature. We'll do it even if it's impossible. How many times have I seen you display that strength when I was working with you? Then, when things were kind of blue and I had trouble seeing why I should be in a situation like this, I say this is something that's got to be faced. I'm no better than anyone else. Well, that was you in me, Mother. You see, unless a fellow has hardships, he really never knows just what type of person he is. It's when you have to rely on that something inside that you begin to know yourself and also see what a gift your parents have given you. To this day, you may say, yes, but all fellows get along okay. We're just a couple of parents, the same as all the rest. Well, this was true, except that by nature, this Army life was about the toughest thing that could happen to me. Remember my year's stay at Michigan State College? Well, I guess I'm just about one of those few guys who will always be a homebody. And yet, because you gave me something else besides a strong love of home, I've gotten along well in here, and I'm contented to stay until it's over. Not even if you were millionaires would you have given me as much. Money can't buy these things.
Wow.
Wowee.
I know.
Heavy and good.
Yeah. What do you all
And I
think
want to know
about
what
this?
happened at Michigan State.
I do too. Clearly very difficult, or he thought it was at the time, and he's realizing this is.
I know he played football there. And, yeah, that was
Just heavy, heavy, but,
his dad giving
impactful.
props to his mom and dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mitch and I have often said, it just makes you feel less than. Like, oh, I was not this person to my mom and dad. You weren't as reverent. I mean, you're just like, he has such love and reverence and all of this that you give. But obviously, we didn't write all these letters to our parents, but
Yeah.
wow. I mean, just wow.
I mean, you might have reflected on that in the same way if you were faced with possibly dying.
Possibly.
You
yeah.
have to think about he's just lost his friend. He has no idea if he's going to come back. So he's probably thinking,
Oh, but he's so much more.
this is it.
He's so much worried about them, more about
I
them.
know.
I would be a little bit more narcissistic, I think, worrying about me. But yeah,
Yeah.
very, very much so. Very much.
But it is
so.
an interesting way to think about it. Like when he's there, he's feeling fine. Like he doesn't feel unsafe necessarily. He's
Sure.
eating well and flying
Yep.
planes. He really likes it. And,
Oh yeah, that's true.
And then he
Yeah.
thinks about, but they're back at home having no idea what I'm doing. It's probably why he was so anti-Vietnam War. Didn't you tell us that, Dad, that he was very much against the Vietnam War? He was probably very
Yeah, he
nervous
was.
about you and your brothers.
Yeah.
And knowing that he was going to now have to be the parent,
Sure.
possibly staying at home,
Sure.
worried about his sons. Who knows? Let's finish this letter with a little more Lowell news in his own words.
Rationing sounds pretty drastic nowadays. Imagine our house being short on butter. It doesn't seem possible. Well, it won't last long. I'm convinced, as I keep repeating, early 44 we'll see the war over. Tell Tom Walsh he should get you in that fortress. After all, your son is a first pilot on one. Think I'll drop Mrs. Phelps a letter of sympathy now. Good night, and God darn it, don't worry. God bless and keep you. Your loving son, Jay Bruce.
I did laugh when he says, imagine the house being short on butter. It's sort of like,
I did too.
you put butter on everything,
I know
Dad.
it.
Is this
I
a
know
Grandpa
it.
Bruce thing? Like,
Yeah, let's blame him.
Absolutely.
I was like, can't seem possible that there's no butter. That made me laugh out loud.
I did too, yeah.
So I think it's interesting. Who is Tom Walsh, and why does he have his own fortress around Lowell or
Do not
nearby
know.
that his parents could get
idea.
in?
Don't know.
Need to dig in some research on that, I guess.
We're gonna have to do some digging.
I don't think he has his own fortress.
Well, maybe not, but maybe he
his
doesn't
own
own his
brew.
own
But he's got
B-17.
access to one.
He has access to one, yeah, for sure. I don't know. So that's another mystery, perhaps.
Yep.
So we're going to finish today with an excerpt of a letter from April 7th where Bruce talks about his Uncle Jim in his own words.
Say, I've been meaning to get Jim a watch for all the things he's done for me. That money when I had my operation, the money when you came out here, etc., not to mention all the money when I was in school. Don't say anything to him, but if I can take a bunch of the to-be repaired parts up to LA this week or next, I'm going to see if I can't get him one. It won't be an expensive watch, but I just want him to know that I haven't forgotten all the things he's done for me. Also, living alone the way he does, it ought to cheer him up a bit. I can appreciate this living alone business now. When I get paid again, I'll send another $100 or $150 home also. Ain't I rich, though? Nothing else to spend it on, so I might as well save it, right? All my love and prayers to your loving son, Jay Bruce.
So that's nice. He's going to get Jim a watch.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of questions. What was Bruce's operation? That Jim seemed to have a lot of just disposable income to help his nieces and nephews. Maybe it seems like they were close, which I guess they worked at the power plant together. So maybe. I mean, do you all remember Jim? I don't think Aunt Lori would because it says he died in 1965. But Dad, you were
I do remember
teenager.
Jim. I don't remember a lot about him. I got a kick out of the idea that he was sending Dad money and giving Dad money whenever he could, because Dad sure did that for me. I know that. He did it for all the kids, I think. But yeah, I don't really remember him. To say I don't remember Dad's Uncle Charlie at all, but I do remember Jim. He was tall and lanky, and I know he got shocked on the job at the Lowell Power Company, but I'll have to look up to find out how many volts it was that he survived.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember lots of pictures of him. He's always with Grandpa Frank by car, and always working, with doing the power lines or whatever. There was always pictures with him.
And he never married, so he had some disposable income.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. What's this operation? We don't know this either, right?
I don't know.
Yeah,
It had to have been something he did before the war, or had done before the war, right? Because he's already referencing that it already happened, right?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing, again, I have no idea where his tonsils were taken out, but I do know they had him taken out in a dentist office.
Yeah, that could
They had
be.
him taken out at the dentist office, but I don't know if that was maybe then. I mean,
Think Marty would know?
I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. We can ask.
I'll give me an excuse to call her.
There you go.
That's good. So yeah, some things to figure out, but it does seem like, they were close, and it's nice that he's going to, get him a gift for thank you. So he's very reflective in this episode, right? Being grateful for the people that is in his life. That's very nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Letters Home. We hope you continue to listen as we go through Bruce's story. You can listen to Letters Home on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the Lowell Historical Museum website and YouTube channel. New episodes drop every Thursday. The Lowell Historical Museum has digitized versions of Bruce's letters, so you can read them in full, along with primary sources for most of the people, places, and events we've talked about here today, plus more. You can also follow the Lowell Historical Museum on Facebook and the Letters Home podcast on Instagram at Letters Home Lowell. Thank you to Roger McNaughton for our podcast music and to WRWW 92.3 FM for letting us record in their studio at Lowell High School every week. Tune in or stream WRWW at lowellradio.org. See you next time.